Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue on with the Hangman game, and the focus for the first challenge is going to be getting things rendered to the browser window. Right now, all of the important output for the game is sitting in the console, and that's pretty useless. So let's go ahead and scroll up to the top. We still have the challenge comments in place for the previous one. I'm just going to remove those and paste in the new one. There are 3 steps I want you to complete. Those steps 1 and 2 are very similar. So for step 1, we're going to display the puzzle in the browser instead of the console. All I want you to do is get this output showing up somewhere up here as opposed to being hidden away in the console, and you're going to need to use a bit of DOM manipulation to get that done. Step 2 is very similar, but for the guesses left. We also want to show that important information up here in the browser window. Step 3 has to do with a bit of refactoring. What we're going to do is separate the Hangman definition, so all of this stuff, with the actual usage of the class. Let's go ahead and keep the Hangman definition in this file, and let's take all of the other code that actually uses it and move it over into app.js. And remember, we're going to have to link that file in as well. So take some time to go through those 3 steps. When you're done, test your work. The game should be pretty functionally the same, except for the information should be displaying up here as opposed to down below. Pause the video, test your work. When you're done, click play. How'd you do? Let's go ahead and kick things off. I'm going to create a couple of elements in my HTML file for both of these values. Over here, we can add both of those into the mix. I'll start off with my paragraph, and then I'll have another paragraph down below. And for both of them, I am going to add an ID so I can correctly target them. The first one can be for the puzzle. I'll just set it to an ID of puzzle. And the ID for the second one could be something like guesses. This is where I am going to show the number of guesses left. Excellent. So we have our HTML changes in place. We can save those. Now over here, we're going to set up a bit of DOM manipulation. Down below, where we have console.log calls, we want to replace those with us selecting some element from the DOM and updating its text content property. Now we're going to be updating the text content for each element in 2 places, so I'm going to select it up above, allowing me to just reference that DOM element down below in both locations. So const puzzle element equals, here we're going to use document.querySelector, which we've used plenty of times before, and we're looking for an element that has the ID equal to puzzle. And we're going to do the exact same thing for guesses. So const guesses element equals document.querySelector, selecting by ID guesses. Excellent. Now it's excellent. Typo fixed. From here, we're going to go ahead and actually use both of these values down below. So let's knock it out right here for puzzle element. The puzzle element initial text content value should be whatever we were originally printing to the console. So we'll use game1.getPuzzle to actually get the puzzle and show it to the screen. Now we can start here. We can save the file and see if we're seeing it. Right here, we are indeed seeing it. Now the problem is that changes aren't being reflected. If I hit C, for example, up above, we can see that the guess is being processed, but the output isn't changing. And that's because down below, we do not update that DOM element on key press. So right here, we're going to remove that console.log puzzle element.textContent. Here we are setting text content to whatever comes back from game1.getPuzzle. Awesome. Now we have that in place, we should see those changes reflected. Right here, I can hit C, T, and A, and we can see that all of the letters are correctly getting replaced. Perfect. Now let's move on to the guesses element. Guesses, element.textContent. All we're going to do is get game1.remaining guesses, and I'm going to take this line exactly, copy it, and paste it down below. And then we can remove any leftover console.log calls. I already removed the 2 from inside of the keypress callback function. I still have the 2 right here, so let's go ahead and clean those up. And there we have it. This is steps 1 and 2 complete. Now it looks like I have an error over here. Guesses element is null. That's hangman.js line 44, so that would be right here. It looks like I probably have a typo. Yep. I'm missing an E, G-U-E-S-S-E-S, simple bug to fix, so we can save the file again, and this time things are rendering correctly. Awesome. Bugs come up all the time. You learn how to fix them quickly as you actually fix more and more. So before you know it, those bugs aren't going to waste a ton of your time. But if you do run into issues, you might still be spending maybe 5 minutes tracking them down, and that is perfectly fine. You'll get faster as you fix more. So over here, we have our guesses showing up too. If I hit the letter Z, that is going to be an invalid guess. Right here, we have one remaining guess. If I hit C, that one is correctly handled. And then I have A and T as well. Perfect. So now all we need to do is move on to step 3. For step 3, I wanted you to separate out the Hangman class definition from its actual usage down below. So we're going to do that by first removing the challenge comments, and this and the 2 methods, those are going to stay. It's this stuff that's going to go. I'm going to cut all of that out, save the file, and I'm going to bring it over to app.js. Here we can choose to leave the comments in place, or we could choose to remove them. Since all of this exists in the PDF guide, I'm going to go ahead and choose to remove them. I'm going to delete them, paste in what we had before, and all we need to do is link in this file so it actually runs. Inside of index.html, we could link it above or below Hangman. Since app.js uses stuff from Hangman though, it has to be below. Script source. Then we set up the file name, that is app.js. Perfect. Now that we have this in place, we can save the file and we should have the same functionality as we had before we started with step 3, and we do. We have our prompt, we have the number of guesses left. If I make a good guess, it shows up. If I make an incorrect one, our remaining guesses count drops by 1. And there we have it, challenge complete. We now have a little bit of interaction in the application, and someone could actually play through the game. And now I want to get into the second and final challenge for this video, and this is where we're going to figure out if the user finished the game. If they finished the game successfully by guessing all of the letters before their guesses ran out, or if they finished the game by failing, running out of guesses before they guessed all of the letters. So let's go ahead and outline what steps I'd like you to take to get this done. What we're going to do is move through 4 steps, and we're going to track the current status of the game. There are 3 statuses you can be in. You can either be playing the game, meaning that you haven't finished the puzzle by guessing all of the letters, but you also haven't failed. You may have failed the game, meaning that you ran out of guesses, or you might have finished the game, meaning that you guessed all of the letters without running out of guesses. So let's go ahead and move through the 4 steps to get this done. The first one is going to be to set up a new status property for all Hangman games with an initial value of playing, and you can knock that out right in the constructor. The second one, this is where we have the meat of the challenge. You're going to need to create a new function, and you're going to need to calculate the new value for status. So we want to look at all of the various values we have access to and figure out which status they fall into. I've failed the game if I've ran out of remaining guesses. That one's easy. If I've finished the game, that means all of the letters in Word exist somewhere in the guessed letters array. I have guessed all of the letters that make up the word I'm playing with. For that, you're going to need to turn to an array function like for each to calculate whether or not all of the letters have been guessed. That one might take you a bit of working with, and that's okay. Now the last one is playing. If you haven't failed and you haven't finished, you're playing, so that one's super easy. Now that's step 2, creating the method. Step 3 is to actually call it. So after we set up the code for going through the process of calculating what to do with a guess, after we've determined if it's a duplicate or if it's a failed guess, we are going to recalculate the status. So you can just put this at the bottom of that method. Step 4, all I want you to do is to print the status to the screen right away when the game first starts, and then down below after we process a guess. So let's go ahead and move through what you can do to see if you did things correctly. If I were to refresh the page, I would expect to see playing in the console. When you first start a game, you're always in that playing state. If I then made 2 incorrect guesses, I would expect to see failed. I only have 2 guesses available to me, and once I get to 0, I've failed the game. Now I can refresh the browser and make 3 correct guesses for C, A, and T, and at that point in time, I should see finished, since I've guessed all of the letters without running out of guesses available to me. So this one might take you a little bit of time, but that's okay. Take as much time as you need to actually knock this out and test your work. Pause the video. When you're done, come back and click play. How'd you do? I'm going to kick things off by taking the comments and copying them over to this file as well, since we'll be spending a bit of time over here. And we're going to move on with step 1. We want to set up a new status property with the initial value for playing. That's super easy right here. This dot status equals the string playing. Perfect. Now, step 2 is where the meat of the challenge lies. This is recalculating this dot status. So let's go ahead and get that done as well. Down below, I'm going to set up that method. That is hangman dot prototype dot right here. We could call this whatever we like. I'm going to call it calculate status. We'll set this equal to a regular function since we are going to be accessing this, and we don't need any arguments. Now, this function is going to get called in step 3, but we can add that in real quick, allowing us to test our work. Down below, at the bottom of make guess, all we're going to do is recalculate the status. So right here, this dot calculate status. And this is the only place we actually need to call that code. Could we have included all of that code down below? Sure, but that would make guess super long, trying to solve multiple problems in one function. It's best to break that out into its own method. So now we're actually going to worry about calculating the status. As I mentioned, we have those 3 states, and the first one, checking if they've failed, is pretty easy. If our condition, our code. The code is going to set this dot status equal to, in this case, failed, and the condition is just going to check if we've ran out of remaining guesses. If this dot remaining guesses equals the number 0. If it does, we have definitely failed the game. Now we can actually test this one out before continuing on with the more complex state checks. Over in app.js, we can add our console.log call in. I'm going to add that right here, console.log. That would be game1.status. I'll take this exact same line, copy it, and paste it down below so we can see the status over time. Now if we actually save this file, the browser should refresh, and right here we're getting playing. If I make 2 incorrect guesses, I will guess P and O. You can see the status switched to failed, which is indeed right. So let's go ahead and figure out how to calculate if someone has successfully solved the puzzle. We need to make sure that all of the letters that exist in the word array also exist in remaining guesses. If they do, that means that they've correctly guessed all of the letters. And we're going to go ahead and knock that out using the for each array method. There are a few different ways you could have gotten this done, and as long as you got it done, then they're all valid. Right here, let's start off with for each. So let finished equal true. Then down below, we're going to use for each to figure out what the actual finished value should be. So this .word .for each, we're going to go through each letter. So I'll set up the callback to have that as the argument. And what we're going to do is set up an if statement, checking if that particular letter has been guessed. Right here, let's knock that out. This .guessed letters, we're going to check if it contains, using the includes method, the following letter. If it does contain that letter, then we're good to go. We're not actually going to change the finished value at all. It's only if at some point we run across a single letter that is not in guessed letters do we want to consider this a failure. So right here, else finished equals to false. Now, if it's not clear why we're leaving nothing in here, let's actually add it in. Finished equals true. The problem with this is that as long as the last letter in a word was guessed, finished is going to end up being true. So we don't want to update things to true at all. We're only going to switch things to false if at any point in our iteration we actually run into something that has not been guessed. A single thing that hasn't been guessed is enough to cause the whole puzzle to not be considered finished. So let's go ahead and actually see this work. Down below, we have our if statement for remaining guesses, else if. We're going to check if they have finished. If they have finished, this .status will get set equal to finished. And that's great. Down below that, else, if they haven't finished and they haven't failed, then they're still playing. This .status equals playing. Perfect. Let's go ahead and actually test this out. I'm going to refresh the page. We have our little puzzle. If I type in CAT, the status switches to finished correctly. I'm going to go ahead and refresh things. If I type in QWE, then we can see that we are indeed failing. Now you'll notice that yes, I am able to go into the negatives. That's okay for the moment. That was not part of the challenge. Everything else though is working really, really well. Now I want to show you a couple of different ways we could have approached the problem of calculating whether or not the puzzle has been finished. An alternative way we could have solved this was using the filter method. I could have filtered out all of the letters that have been guessed, leaving just the ones that have not been guessed. If I have any letters left, then we know the puzzle isn't finished. Let's take a look at how we might structure that. So I'm going to comment out all of the stuff we have so far. And up above, I am going to create a variable. I'll make this variable a const, letters unguessed. We'll set it equal to this.word.filter, passing in our callback function. Here we get access to the individual letter. We return true if we want to keep the item and false otherwise. We only want to keep the ones that have not been guessed, so right here we can return this.guessed letters, checking if it includes the letter that we just had up above as the callback function argument. Now this is going to return true when the letter has already been guessed. We want to return true when letters have not been guessed, so we're just going to flip that using the logical not operator. Now we can create finished once again. Const finished equals, and all we're going to do is check if letters unguessed, the variable that we just set up, which is an array, has a length equal to 0. So if there are no unguessed letters, that's great, we're finished. If there are any unguessed letters, that's fine too, we're just not finished. I'm going to save the hangman.js file with its new code in place, and we're going to run through those three things. Here I'm seeing playing. If I guess C, A, and then another letter that doesn't exist, like W, I have one remaining guess. If I use that guess for T, I do see finished. Once again, I'll just refresh real quick and pick 3 letters that aren't in the puzzle, and I do indeed get failed. Whoops, I keep forgetting that I only need to pick 2 letters to actually fail this puzzle. Perfect. So this is another way we could have structured our code to solve the problem, and both are perfectly valid. There are also plenty of other approaches we could have taken, and I just want to talk about one. We're going to look at a new array method designed specifically for this sort of problem. Let's head over to the array methods page. That's mdn array. And over here, we're going to look at the methods in the left-hand sidebar. And the one that we're looking for is every, down below every. Every returns either true or false. It returns true if every array item matches your function, your comparison function, and it returns false otherwise. So let's say that our test function checks if a number is equal to 0. If we have 6 items in the array and they're all 0, the test function is going to pass for all of them, so every will return true. If just one of those numbers isn't 0 though, that's going to fail the whole thing, and every is going to end up returning false. It's super handy for situations just like the ones we find ourselves in. So I'm going to go ahead and also comment out this example, and we're going to look at a third approach. Right here, we can knock this out, const finished, setting it equal to this dot, we're accessing word still. This time though, we're using every, and we're going to set up the callback function. This callback function, like all of them for the array, gets called one time for each item in the array, and it gets called with the individual item. Now we get to choose to return true or false. We return true if we consider this thing to pass our tests, and false otherwise. In this case, we're going to return true if the letter has indeed been guessed. So right here, return. We're going to check this dot guessed letters. We're going to check if it includes. We're going to check if it includes the letter from up above. And there we go. This is a more concise way to solve the exact same problem. If just one of the letters are not guessed, this is going to return false, failing the whole thing. Every only works if every single item in the array passes your test function. I'm going to go ahead and save hangman.js and test things out for the last time. I'll guess CAT, and I can see I've finished. I'll give a refresh and guess L and K, and I can see that I have indeed failed. So there are a lot of different ways we can solve all of the problems that we find ourselves with. These are 3 different valid approaches to solve the problem. I'm going to stick with the first one though, because I wanted to show you this technique. We can simplify this further using these shorthand syntax. We can take what we return, cut it out, remove the curly braces and the return keyword. Perfect. Now we have an approach that takes just a single line of code. And that's where we're going to stop for this one. Let's go ahead and actually remove all of the comments from both files. Up above, we have the challenge comments here. And in app.js, I have the challenge comments here. All right, that's it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Let me make sure to save all of these files.